I do it every day, and when I told my friends about it, they made fun of me. What is wrong with this generation? Story 1. I think it is important for the commenters to include their age. In my 20s, I called my parents way more than I do now at 40 years old. Story 2. I wish I liked my parents enough to call them ever. My parents were always emotionally absent, and my upbringing was very sterile and strict. More like a teacher-student relationship, heavy on consequences for underachieving but without the structure of a stereotypical household. I have always been jealous of people who actually want to talk to their parents. I have met many people who do, and I have been part of their families by proxy even. It always hurts me on some level that these people treat me more like their own child than it feels like my parents ever did. I think that is maybe why people make fun of you. They wish they wanted to call their mothers as often as you do. I wish I wanted to call my mother, but I do not. Story 3. My mother and I email each other daily and have done so for the last 7 to 10 years. We also speak on the phone on holidays, birthdays, and other special occasions. She is moving in with me next year, so that will end at some point. Story 4. Not that often. She calls me twice a week, and I visit her once a week for dinner. Good relationships with your parents are apparently considered cringe. Story 5. My mother typically calls me twice a day. If I am lucky, she will not call me first, and I try to call her once a day, sometimes twice. Story 6. My parents make no effort to ask about my life. About a year ago, after we had our first child, I decided to try an experiment, to see how long it would take them to ask about our child or call. In other words, I stopped initiating contact. I will update you when they do. Story 7. During the last 5 years she was alive, I once informed her that my sister was hospitalized. Some mothers are not very good people or are psychologically broken. Story 8. Very rarely. We haven't really been close my entire life, just kind of there until she decides I'm in trouble. Story 9. Once every few months for my mother. I have not spoken to my father since February 2009. They were not good parents and are not great people in general. I am very close to going no contact with my mother as well because she is difficult and narcissistic in addition to being unstable. Story 10. I used to call my mother about once a month, but now hardly ever. My parents believe in anti-vaccine conspiracy theories, which I do not. Therefore, communication has greatly broken down. Story 11. I call my family damn near every day. Whether it is my father, mother, or any of my siblings, I try to contact someone and tell them I love them. Story 12. I am on the other side of the world from her. She is 87 and does not have much to do, so I give her entertainment every other day by video calling her. Story 13. Never. But I was emancipated at age 6, so I do not really feel like I have a mother. I have a birth giver, that's about it. If I did have a mother, I would probably text once a week. I am not a big fan of calls, and I am in college and work full-time, so I do not have a lot of free time. I am currently on my 30-minute break right now. Story 14. When she was alive, never. She was a very mentally unstable, born-again Southern Baptist Christian. She sent me a few cards or letters over the years. I do not know how she got my address, and they were filled with religious messages, also telling me I would burn in hell if I did not become born again and accept Jesus Christ as my Savior. It did not help that my grandmother told her I was gay, after I explicitly told her not to. When she died, she left me some money. My half-sister was the executor, and I told her to donate it to a non-profit organization I had done volunteer work for, in my mother's name. Unfortunately, at that time, I did not know about the Trevor Project, which would have been perfect. Story 15. Maybe every 2 to 4 weeks, just to be guilt-shamed about how I should call more often. Meanwhile, she may call me 2 to 4 times per year. Story 16. My wife talks to her mother every day. I talk to my mother via text every other week, and that is her asking, "Can you order this off Amazon for me?" My father calls my grandfather at the same time every night. He figures he will never know when it will be the last time. Good man. Story 17. I message her every day, but we talk around once a week. I don't have a life interesting enough to call every day. We would run out of things to say. Story 18. I live with my mother due to some difficult circumstances, but when I lived by myself, it was at least once a week. I love her deeply. Even now, at age 29, my mother is one of my best friends. She is someone I can talk to when I make mistakes, someone I can ask for advice, and someone who can help me when I need it. The only concern is that I will be a broken person when she passes away. I hate thinking about it, but I need to prepare myself emotionally so that I can be ready for the day my world changes. Story 19. Lucky enough to still have both of my parents around, still healthy, still together. I talk to one or the other 2 to 3 times a week. Sometimes more, sometimes less. Story 20. My mom passed away 44 years ago when I was 21. Prior to her passing, I went to see her every day in the nursing home. Story 21. I call my family on birthdays, Mother's Day, Father's Day, Thanksgiving, and Christmas. They call me on my birthday too, unless I tell them not to because I am traveling. Story 22. I used to call her several times a week, but anytime things get serious or I say anything critical, she ignores me. I am done playing passive-aggressive games. If she wants to call, she can do it this time. I am much closer with my father for various reasons. Story 23. Never. She died about 3 years ago and was non-communicative, not knowing who I was for about 10 years before that. Story 24. 2 to 3 times a month. I am not young and neither is she. She is now well into her 70s, and we live far from each other on different continents. Do not worry about what others say. You do what works for you. Making fun of others for staying in touch with your family reflects more on them than on you. Your mother is happy when you call. You are happy when you call. Perfect. Keep it up. Story 25. Almost every day after work, my father is not around anymore, and to be frank, my mother is kind of needy. Story 26. Not as often as I should, but neither of us are talkers. I have about a minute of small talk, followed by a minute of silence, and then we end the call. Story 27. If I don't call her Friday night, she usually calls me Saturday morning, but late morning or early noon because she expects rightly that I will be hungover and waking up late. I usually do not have much to say, so I just listen to her. She likes to talk, and I prefer listening anyway. Story 28. Very rarely. If she calls me, it is usually because something bad has happened. However, we text every day like normal friends, and it works for us. I should add that we see each other in person quite a bit. If we did not, I am sure we would call more. Story 29. Once a week. I live a few blocks away, so I see her often, but sometimes work and my personal life keep me busy. Story 30. I cannot call my mother. She passed away 6 years ago due to complications from diabetes. When she was alive, I talked to her every other day or texted her about 3 times a week. Story 31. I usually give her a call on the drive home from work. My father died a few years ago, and my sister hates her and will not talk to her. I know she appreciates having someone to talk to. Story 32. I used to call her every Friday. Sadly, she passed away a couple of years ago. Yesterday was her birthday. She would have been 70. Story 33. Never. I haven't spoken since 2018. She is a hardcore narcissist, and I distanced myself from the toxicity. It is so much better. Story 34. When I was living on my own, never. It is not something that I am proud of. I just have a bad habit of not interacting with people who are currently involved in my life. Ideally, I would talk with her at least once a week. Nowadays, I firmly believe that family should stay connected, no matter how strained the relationship may be. Story 35. I do not have to call her. She has to live with me due to medical reasons. It is difficult, but it is what it is. Story 36. She is 90 and in pretty good health. The dog and I walk over once or twice a week when the weather is nice for a half-hour visit. Maybe one call a week, but multiple texts. We go out to dinner a few times a month. My brother lives above her in a 2-flat, and my sister is there 5 times a week at night. We all live in the same town. When she was younger, my wife was alive, and the grandchildren were living at home. We all had Sunday dinner almost every week at her house. Story 37. Hardly ever, sadly. She moved away, then moved home, then moved away again. She expects our relationship to be maintained by me going to see her, which is a 3-hour drive. I am over it. I do love her, but I have children under 10. If she wants to spend time together, it is on her. Story 38. At the end of every day, once in my second year of college, I did not tell them about a minor crack in my bone. It was around the second wave of the coronavirus pandemic. I did not want to worry them more, as she was already terrified by the news of me joining coronavirus duty. After that wave, I went home for a break. When she saw my photo with a plaster on my hand, she made me promise to call her every day. Story 39. I used to call her most days, at least 5 times a week. She died 6 years ago, so I cannot call her anymore. No regrets. Who cares what your friends think? Story 40. Every 2 to 3 days. I recently moved out of state and will call if I have the chance after work. Story 41. Daily. She likes to call me when I am on my way there just to be sure I am coming. Yes, I go home every single day. Story 42. I did not call often enough. She called the United States Department of Defense looking for him. They routed her call to me overseas. Story 43. How about me talking to my mother every day in person since I live with her? It definitely saves on the rent. At the moment, our relationship could best be described as well-loved roommates who just happen to be related. Story 44. 2 to 3 times a week, usually. We live about a 30-minute drive away. I am actually in her house right now, sleeping in my childhood bedroom because I am getting some work done at my place. It is a nice little change. It has been at least a decade since we slept under the same roof. Story 45. Since her husband died and she was ill, I call her daily. We live 10 minutes away, but I see her only on weekends. Story 46. Not as much as I should. Normally about once a month. It is not that I do not want to talk with her. It is just that I really do not have anything to say. Story 47. My wife and my mother text pretty much daily, so I get regular updates. I text my mother directly if it is about something specific, which is maybe once a week. I also visit regularly. My father emails or passes information along via my mother. I think the only people I actually speak to regularly on the phone are my doctor and pharmacist. Story 48. She and I usually talk at least once a week, and I am close enough to her and my father that my wife and I have dinner with them every other Sunday. Story 49. Apologies, I just noticed this was Ask Men. 26-year-old female here. I am indeed not a man. Every day I tell her I'm coming home from wherever I went that day. I currently live with her as my apartment is being renovated. She's turned it into a gag where when I tell her I'm leaving, she repeats, "I'm heading home," in a super annoying and exaggerated voice. I am having a hard time grasping that soon, home won't mean where she is. Story 50. I don't call my mother very often, but I text her frequently and visit her often. My parent lives 5 minutes away from me, so we visit each other's house regularly. Story 51. I wish I could call her, but she died 10 months ago. We used to text every day. I miss her. I always catch myself wanting to tell her something or share something with her. It is difficult. I love you, Mom. Story 52. I do not have a good relationship with my parents. We only talk 3 to 4 times a year, usually when they need something from me. My brothers and I cover their living costs. Story 53. It was every day for me. We were very close until cancer decided to interfere and take her from me and my family. Cancer is terrible. If you still have your mom in your life, talk to her, hug her tight, and let her shower you with love and appreciation because you will miss it once it is gone. There is something different about a mom's love, and I miss it every day. Story 54. When she was alive, we would talk for hours at least once a week. That is what I miss most since she has passed. Story 55. Wife used to talk to hers multiple times a day, every day about general life. I used to speak to mother-in-law a few times a week. I speak to mine on average once every 2 weeks, and it is always for an actual reason. Story 56. At least once a day, sometimes more since my father died. It might just be a short good morning call and then in the afternoon a how was your day call. Story 57. Around once a week, sometimes twice, sometimes every other day depending on stress and what generally happened. Since my mother is unable to speak, I need to have something I can tell her. What is wrong with this generation? Behavior like yours and your friends trying to shame others for how they live their lives. Story 58. Monthly, give or take. When I lived in the same city as her, I spent time with her weekly. My mother is a badass. I am in my mid-30s. Story 59. We call every 2 weeks, but we both agree that unless we have something important to share, we are just checking on each other. When my mental health declined a few years ago, she was there calling every few days or even nightly at one point. I will always remember that positively because she reached out without me ever asking or letting her know I was struggling. She just knew. We have had our ups and downs over the years, but she has been there every step of the way. I am very lucky. Story 60. 51 out of 78. Usually once midweek in the evening and then on Sunday nights. My sisters and I video conference with her for anywhere from 30 to 60 minutes. I drive a lot for work, so sometimes I call her if I am driving a good distance late at night, just to have somebody to keep me company if my wife is unavailable. Story 61. Every day. Your mom is the most important person, and for most, if not all of us, especially men, she is the only one who would love us unconditionally. Living 1,000 kilometers away, I call her every day. Nothing special, just to check on her and hear her voice while I still can. Story 62. Message most days. Call a few times a week. Usually see my parents once a week for dinner at my house, and then spend a weekend at theirs every month. Story 63. Specifically my mother? Never. I call my parents perhaps once or twice a year, but even then it is a call to my father's phone and he will pass me over to her for 30 seconds once we are done with his 30 seconds. Story 64. Very rarely. I get to see her 4 to 5 times a week though. Let's just say our relationship has not been the smoothest. Story 65. We are both very busy, with me in college and her running her own business. We usually text every so often, though sometimes we call when we get the chance. Story 66. Never. She has Alzheimer's disease and does not know who I am on the phone. I visit her at least once a week. Story 67. I live with my mother, so I get to see her every day. For some, that may sound like a nightmare, but I love my mother very much. Story 68. My mother is in her 90s. She has 2 iPads and uses FaceTime with all her children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren. I call her or she calls me 4 times a week, usually while I cook. Story 69. When I have a question or about once a month, I am the child she does not have to worry about. Always a good chat. Story 70. Once or twice a week. I can't talk to anybody every day. It would drive me crazy. Well, except my friends I game with. But if we didn't game, I'd get tired of talking to them too. Story 71. She died 20 years ago. Through college it was fine, but now that I have children, I wish I could call her daily. Story 72. I do not call her very often, but I eat lunch with my parents at least once a week. I usually end up talking to my mother more than I do my father. Story 73. Nobody in my family likes talking on the phone. We text socially and call if it is something urgent or quick. However, I talk to her regularly throughout the week. Story 74. Every day, sometimes multiple times a day, I forget things. She babysits a lot while I work. I have a special needs child, and she helps me out. My father died in March, and he was the one who helped me drive my son to therapy. My mother does not drive and lives in a city next to mine. We talk daily about my child, medication, missing my father, how she feels, and if she needs anything or help. Story 75. Once a month at most. Now about once every 2 or 3 months. I'm just not close to her. Everyone says she's nice, but my brother and I have a different perspective. It has felt like a guilt trip all my life, doing what she wanted me to do. My brother moved a couple of states away once we had to sell our childhood home. I bounced around the area renting rooms and sharing apartments. I was always a half-hour drive away from her, though. We'd get together once a month for dinner, sometimes more. I noticed that a lot of our talks were about her life, not mine or my brother's. I try to ask about him since he and I aren't that close either, but the conversation would just go back to her. At one point, she kept trying to guilt-trip me into having children to fulfill her need for grandchildren. I wasn't in a position to have children, let alone raise them well enough, but she kept persisting every time. It got very frustrating. Then she moved literally 500 miles away. She complains that I don't see her enough. I just can't win with her. I would have loved to have a relationship with a parent where I wanted to talk to them every week, but my childhood messed me up so much. I never had a dad. My grandfather died when I was 3. My grandmother did not involve herself in my life at all. It was just a void of love for me, and I had to figure things out on my own by ruining a lot of friendships. 36-year-old male. Story 76. At least once a day, sometimes several times. She stays with me quite a bit. I am 35 years old, and she is one of my best friends. An amazing woman. I am so lucky she is my mother. Story 77. Every day my father passed 5 years ago, and I talk to her every single day. She has a myotrophic lateral sclerosis, so I would visit every weekend because we live in the same city, but I am an hour away with good traffic. I just moved and am now 13 minutes away, so I see her every day now. In a couple of months, I will move into an apartment she is building for me in her attic. Hug your mother and give her back the love she gave you. Story 78. 3 to 4 times a year, maybe. Less than once a month for sure. She only calls me when she needs something. Story 79. At 24, my mother and I exchange a few texts every morning, and we talk on the phone about once a week. Story 80. Not enough. I called my mother yesterday and had a great catch-up. She lives 4 states away from me, so we do not get to see each other often. We talked and laughed. Luckily, she is my mother. Story 81. Twice a day, once at 10 a.m. and once at 10 p.m. If I miss the time even once for any reason or do not answer her first call, my mother would create havoc by calling my friends and relatives, complaining about me going missing or being dead. Story 82. Wow, I am sorry a lot of people did not have good relationships with their mothers. I love my mom. I speak with her almost every day. She is the only family I really have, and we are there for each other. My father was in and out of the picture growing up, though. Story 83. We text regularly, about every 10 days. She sent me this after the New York Knicks versus Indiana Pacers game 1. Story 84. Nearly every day. My dad left soon after I was born, and my stepfather is not really a parent to me, so she is all I had. I would do anything for that woman. Story 85. My mom and I used to talk 4 or 5 times a week while she was alive, until she passed away in 2016. She was amazing and left quite a void. My best friend goes over to his parents' house every morning after the gym and has coffee with them for about 20 minutes, and always has. We are 46 and 47 years old. Ignore your friends and appreciate your mom while she is here. Story 86. I am 23 years old. I moved out at 19. I speak to my parents maybe once every 3 months, if even that. I had a conversation with a coworker around my age. I told him he has family to fall back on since he lives with his parents, but I do not. If there isn't food at home, there isn't food. The guy was calling me Mr. Moneybags, even though I drive a car with 210,000 miles and own a total of 3 pairs of pants. Story 87. Rarely, unless something critical comes up or there is a need to discuss something. Those calls are also very long. I visit my family every long weekend so that my son has a good relationship with his grandparents, aunts, and uncles. Story 88. I talk to my mother all the time. I lost my father to cancer 24 years ago. That makes you realize how short life can be. I have always been close with my mother. Story 89. Maybe once a week on average. I am bad about calling people because I feel like I am bothering them, but she usually calls me. Story 90. It used to be 3, possibly 4 times a week, but as I have grown older, I have realized I have lowered that to once, possibly twice, which suits me better and makes our relationship stronger. Story 91. Most days I talk to my mother on the phone. She always says it will be a quick call, but then we end up talking for 30 minutes. Story 92. I don't call or text my mom as often as I feel I should or as she would want me to. Normally, I might go weeks without talking to her. She would love it if I contacted her at least most days. Story 93. Pretty much every day or every other day. At least 5 days a week. Call me a mama's boy. I like to talk to my mother, so I do not care. Story 94. I wish I could. I am as old as she was when she passed, and it hits a little differently because I am not even 30 yet. Call your mothers more, guys. If not for her, then do it for people like me. Story 95. My mom sends me a little note with her New York Times connections puzzle every morning, but she almost never calls because she says, I know you are busy. I call her about once a week. Story 96. Usually a couple of times every day, but definitely at least once. Time goes so fast and we will not get any younger. I want her to know every day how much I love her. Now that I am older, I appreciate more everything that she did for me and every piece of advice she gave me. Story 97. Only when I feel too happy and need a quick dose of guilt, drama, and unsolicited advice. So like every other day. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.